Right. So we're recording now. Okay, I guess the first thing to do would be maybe we can just go around, introduce ourselves. Yeah.
So who's got?
You want to nominate people,
Do you want
Robert?
me to start?
We'll be in a different order on your screen to our screens.
Uh-huh.
You say who you want to speak first and we'll go around.
Well, we can just do that at random. It's just there's something very strange going on that I'm into speaker mode, and then yet I'm not in the middle. I don't know what's going on here. All right.
It's
So-
okay. When you speak, Robert, a yellow box comes around the person who's speaking. So, so
no,
we know
it's
who's
just
speaking.
what you have is there's view, so you can have gallery view, or you can have speaker view. Now, speaker view, that would mean that the person who's speaking takes up most of the screen, and then there's small boxes around.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is ideal.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think gallery to start with is useful. You can see everyone.
Where is it?
At the top.
Top right-hand corner, John.
Where?
Top right-hand corner.
Right. Oh, yes, I thought it should be. Oh, I see you printed a view.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And tick which you want, gallery or speaker.
I'm sorry, I don't know the alternatives. Gallery or speaker? Well, speaker.
Yes, that's well. I tend to find the speaker view the most useful.
Can I try gallery? How do you find gallery?
Just click on the word gallery.
Can't see it.
Up at the top, right-hand corner.
Top right-hand corner.
View.
That's view.
Yes.
Yeah, gallery view.
I see what you mean.
Click on view, Joan.
I've got it. Yes. Oh, I see. That's better.
All right.
Now I can see who is here. Right. Well, carry on.
I'm having some technical problems here that you know.
Sorry.
Well, I don't know if you can see me, but I'm not seeing anybody else. So I'll carry on anyway. So I'm Robert. I'm a retired chemical engineer. So, and what I'm interested in is, say, chemistry, maths, astronomy, and some biology or nature, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Oh, is it me next?
Yeah, if you like.
Right. Well, I had a speech therapy background, so I had some neurology and neuroanatomy and that sort of stuff. But otherwise, I'm a bit daft in that, you know, at my advanced stage now, I suddenly got into quantum mechanics, which is what our group started as. So that's me. I'm still very interested in quantum mechanics. Okay.
So I'm Sue. I have no scientific background whatsoever, apart from a bit of nursing and a lifelong interest in the human body. So, and I started in Jones quantum mechanics, and that totally floored me. I was absolutely unable to get it at all. But Robert having started up this science forum, I thought I'd have another try, because everything is so interesting to hear about.
Exactly.
Okay, I'll have a go now then. I'm an accountant, or was or still is, do the treasurer for Newcastle and for region as well. My background is mainly in the art side of things. And like Sue, I'm hopeless at quantum physics, so I had to abandon that. It was way over my head. Interested in science, but not knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Right.
Somebody else?
I go next. I'm
Sure.
Nigel Brewster. I'm a retired hospital consultant. So I have a general interest in science, and I've always read popular science books, and I'm quite interested in physics in particular.
I knew your name.
Oh,
Knew it. You did an up on my wife.
so Nigel, what was your field?
I was a pediatrician.
All right.
Oh,
Good. So yeah, yeah. Okay, good. Yeah.
Okay, I'm Helen. I've just said I taught chemistry for a while, and then I worked in the pharmaceutical industry with their records. I've always been interested in all sorts of science, but I think quantum mechanics is a bit beyond me as well. But general popular science, I have a lot of friends who are biology teachers and engineers, and so I get a lot of things from them as well when we have general conversations. So I'm just generally interested in scientific stuff.
Lisa, she should. I think you should talk. You've been quiet so far.
All right.
Lisa?
Lisa.
Lisa?
Lisa.
Are you with us?
I think.
Is she frozen?
Lisa.
Sounds gone off.
It's not muted.
No, she's not muted.
She
Hello,
can't.
Lisa.
Yep, sorry, I didn't have my pods in.
All right. Right. So, would you like to introduce yourself and say what your interests are?
Okay, so I'm Lisa. I've just been over my background a little bit to say that I started life as a mechanical engineer, but then other things took over and I became other things in my career. But I've always retained an interest in astronomy, particularly physics. Interestingly, I'm not very excited by mechanics, rather dull. But I like the sort of science about the wider universe, you know, life and what we are and how we fit into it. And, you know, in a sense, that is my kind of spiritual thing, this connection to the great energies out there. That's my flaky thing. So yeah, and I didn't used to work on a Friday, so it was really nice to come to the U3A just to have that day off. But because of COVID, I used to squash up all my hours into 4 days a week, then have Friday off. I can't do that now because I can only go into one place per day. So I'm working Fridays just for the moment, but only in the morning. So I haven't got loads to offer today, just some thoughts and ideas. But I did go to the Durham University Science Saturday mornings. I don't know if anybody has been to those. They're lovely. They talk about all kinds of things. There was green energy one week, tessellation another week, bats, all kinds of things. So you can just drop in. It's a free lecture on a Saturday morning, open to the public. And they were lovely. And we've worked a lot in the U3 on our quantum mechanics, although I can't profess that I'm any clearer now than I was when I started. But I think that's the nature of quantum mechanics, isn't it? If you understand it, you're not doing it right. That's what I understand. So yeah, so that's a bit about me. Will that do?
Yeah, Lisa, can you check if that's available as a Zoom meeting for everybody? Or
I have had a look and they weren't doing it.
All right.
I haven't checked recently though. I had a look middle of the summer or so, and there wasn't anything on. But I can double check. I can go back and have a look, see if they weren't intending to begin this year. But 2021, I don't know. Maybe they will. I don't know. I'll check.
All right. Good. Thanks.
I think you just need me to reintroduce myself. I did do earlier, but anyway, I'm Gordon Scofield. I'm a mechanical engineer by training, but I spent most of my time either as a contractor or as a consultant within the building services industry. So I say I've worked in the UK, worked in all over East Africa and various things, and I'm just generally interested in science as a broad subject. So that's me.
Well, I think that leaves me then. I'm Janet Devoy. I'm a veterinary surgeon, I used to work for the Ministry of Agriculture as was, and specialised in pathology. So I've got my main interest then would be anything in biology. And I've been following the coronavirus pandemic with great interest. So.
I believe you, Janet, you're going to give a little bit of a presentation, a little talk on coronavirus.
Well, I volunteered to give just a brief talk about mink.
Oh,
Seeing as
yes.
mink
Oh, the right.
popular news.
Yes.
Right. Well, okay. Well, maybe we'll start off with you, Janet. Sorry, we've got some business to get through before we actually come to your talk. But I was going to say that half the news at the moment is about the virus. And are you prepared to sort of be our point person, or maybe do it with Nigel? You know, like just developments with the virus over the month, because there's obviously a lot of articles, a lot of videos about the virus at the moment. You know, where do we stand? Because I think it's as a science area, it's evolving. You know, that there's an awful lot that they don't know about the virus as yet. Yeah.
I can certainly contribute.
No, I mean, I'm not, you know, dumping on you, you know, that, I mean, if Nigel wants to do it by himself, but you see, for example, the latest thing I saw was that the Chinese were finding the virus on frozen food, which had been imported from India, right? And if that's the case, then this is really serious. Yeah. You know, because we don't know if it's on the wrapping or it's actually on the food or it's in the food. Yeah. And then there was a whole lot of issues in America, particularly about the food processing plants. Yeah. So you were getting outbreaks of the virus inside the food processing plants. And then you don't know if it's safe to eat the meat from the processing plants. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've read some of the things about the processing plants, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult to evaluate all the facts because there's all sorts written in the papers, and you sometimes wonder whether they've got it all right.
There were some cases in New Zealand where people were got it when they were in quarantine, and they tried to blame it on something imported, I think, and it turned out that they'd just been very careless in their who they contacted. Something, I can't quite remember the details, but they started off blaming some wrappings from foodstuffs, but that in fact was not true in the end.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to cut across you, but it's like maybe if you and Nigel could get together and then sort of say, like, you know, where do we stand? You know, what we know, you know, where we think we're going on the thing, then, you know, that would be really useful. So rather than all, I guess we've got about 10 people here, all 10 of us looking at the virus at the same time, that's just the two of you could, like, you know, give us an update, you know, periodically. Yeah. I mean, are you prepared to do that?
Yes, could do.
Well, yes.
Well, no, it's not my job to tell you what to do. I mean, I'd like you to sort of say, yeah, you know, I mean, that's my field anyway, and you know, I'd like to do that, or not, as the case.
How are you suggesting they do that, Robert? Are you suggesting that
Yes.
happens now?
I would, yes.
No, not now, because obviously they haven't got enough notice. But I'm saying that, you know, if the two of them would like to be our point guys on the virus, yeah, then that would be good. I think it would be good anyway. Yeah.
It would be good as long as it's not me.
Right. So well, if you're prepared to send, you know, swap your contact details, and then you can decide between the two of you. But it's just that there's like dozens and dozens of articles appearing every sort of week on, you know, what's happening, where do we stand with the virus. Yeah.
That's true, yes.
All right.
I mean, it is a very large task to cover every aspect of it. So, I mean, we need to be looking at vaccines at the moment
Uh-huh.
to see how safe they are and how effective they are.
Uh-huh.
Well, you could, if you did get together, you could decide which particular topic. You wouldn't have to cover everything, but something that would be helpful to clarify for the rest of us.
That's true.
Yeah.
That would be helpful, yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's questions like, can you catch it twice? Or what's going on with, that some people are catching it twice. How long are the viruses good for or whatever? Yeah? All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So good. All right. I need to do a pitch on behalf of Mike for the newcomers. Basically, what's happening is that the U3A have taken out a license for the Zoom, and it needs to be paid for. The U3A is really suffering because we're not having any meetings at Pink Lane. Mike's crying himself to sleep at night because of the lack of funds. So if you could make a contribution of, say, £3 towards Mike, or towards the U3A, that would be good. So
I've done it, Robert, yes. Thanks to them.
right. But, we're desperately short of funds, and Mike needs every penny he can get. Yeah.
And can Mike give his details so that we know where to send it?
It's actually, so it's in the newsletter. It's Barclays Bank, and it's the Newcastle U3A account.
Right.
I don't have the details immediately to hand, but it's the Gosforth branch of Barclays Bank. But the details have been in the newsletter for 2 or 3 months now, basically for people that for subscriptions as much as anything.
Thank you.
At the moment, we're about 100 members down on our numbers from last year. So that's where our difficulties are stemming from.
Yeah. I'd sent you a check, Mike, and
I've got yours, Gordon. Yes, I know. Thank you.
Yes. To be honest, I made it in your own name, so I hope that didn't cause any inconvenience.
Not at all. Not at all.
Well, I can't find it on my copy of the November newsletter.
I may not be on the November one, Sue.
Okay.
Yeah, I can send you. I think I've got your email address. I can send you the details.
Otherwise, I can send you a check if to your home address, if that was all right.
You can, yes. Yeah.
So the home address?
8 Moor Court.
What court?
Moor, M-O-O-R.
Yes.
Westfield, all one word.
Yes.
Gosforth.
Yes.
NE3 4YD.
Thank you very much.
No, that's lovely. Thank you.
God bless you, ma'am. Right. Right. Can you see this?
No.
Doesn't read properly, Robert.
Okay. Basically, I've had an email from Catherine, which was an offer of some virtual talks for U3A. Right.
Oh.
Right. So one of them was from Reading U3A, which is on the virology of coronavirus. Yeah. Given that we've got 2 people, within the group who would probably be able to give that talk, then maybe we should forget about that one. And then there was a review of the Ignoble Awards.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So we'll do that. Is anybody interested in that?
Yeah, I think that would be quite amusing.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we want the Igs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for you that are not aware of what the Ignoble Awards are, they're basically an alternative to the Nobel Prizes, but they're awards for the most, we can say, useless areas of research in science.
It's all tongue in cheek.
Yes. All right. So we'll see if we can go ahead on that. And then the second thing was I had another email from Catherine talking in terms of going regional. Yeah. All right. So maybe we need to take a vote on whether or not we're prepared to do that, sort of expand what we're offering regionally.
There's a few groups are doing that, Robert. Mo's IT group is regional. The astronomy group is not regional, it's national because we get people from Dover. So there's a few do it. It just depends if you want the numbers or get the numbers get too many, but I don't think they will, to be honest.
Right.
Not yet, anyway.
I think we need to settle a bit in our group, don't you?
It's
right, but you know, I think we've settled down quite well. You know that I think we know where we're going.
Yes.
I mean, it's probably not going to go regional until say January anyway. You know, maybe next month, maybe the month after. But I'm proposing that we do, and then we'll see what happens. You know.
Would that just give you access to more speakers?
More speakers, right. But then there's all the problems as well of having more people in.
Yes.
You have to be much more formal sort of presentations, don't you? That work properly.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think it's like, I mean, we're only talking about 5-minute, 10-minute presentations at the most, unless somebody wants to do longer. You know, so I mean, the general format of a round table, I wouldn't want to change. Yeah. You know, that I mean, we're not supposed to be experts, or we're not presenting ourselves as experts. So, you know, we're just sharing opinions or sharing experiences rather than, you know, than actually giving a formal lecture. There's nothing to stop us from giving formal lectures, but I don't think that's what we're set up for to do.
I think one of the problems, in inverted commas, is if you get more than about 20 people, 30, 25 people, you go onto 2 screens and you can't see everybody. But the chances of getting, I mean, Music for Pleasure gets 19 yesterday. Mo's IT group get that sort of number, and it's perfectly handleable. So I would support going to the region. It, amongst other things, it gets our name up in front of people again. Publicity is a good thing.
Is it just for while we're all confined, or is it intended that regional will carry on when we're reasonably back to normal?
Well, let's just see what happens. I think this lockdown's going to be going on for at least 6 months, as far as I'm concerned. So, you know, let's do what we do and then see what happens in 6 months' time. I mean, it may be that if we do regional, then we'll continue regional just on the grounds that the regional people can't come to Pink Lane.
Yeah, I think Zooming is going to go on infinitum at the moment. I suspect that after we start meeting again in Pink Lane, we will Zoom the meetings that are held there to people that cannot attend.
Yeah,
right.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't want to tread on Nigel and Janet's toes, but I you know, there's a question of like, will it ever be safe to go into town?
I go in every day, Robert. I'm in there every day in town.
Well, good luck to you. But I mean, you know, I go down to the North Road and I look at the buses, and the buses are mostly empty. I look at the metro go past and it's mostly empty. I mean, you know, the vaccine is only 90% effective, I think. Yeah. So anyway, you know, we'll just have to see. But the best thing to do is make the most of the 6 months, get the maximum benefit, and then we'll put it back on the table in 6 months' time. And if there's people want to continue, we'll continue, and if they don't, then we won't.
Yeah, that's right. Good idea.
Yeah. So we'll take a vote on that. So all those in favor of going regional?
Want to raise a hand for that, and then you can see who's raised their hands.
Yes, that's what we're doing.
I meant
You're in.
Never mind.
It's only Lisa we can't see.
The owl hasn't got hands.
It's not, you didn't even blink.
Just wink with the right eye, Lisa.
Janet, did you raise your hand?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I was only. I'm really having technical problems for some reason, and I'm only seeing like 6 people at a time.
Lisa,
Have you got participants, Robert? If you click on participants, people can raise their hands that way.
Well, the
How
reaction.
do I do that? I've got participants.
I've just raised my hand. Can you see it?
Oh, right, I see. How do you do that? How do you do
raise
that?
hands on the bottom.
All right, maybe because I'm running the group, I'm not seeing that because,
No,
yeah.
you can't, no. That's generally speaking is for the order of somebody wanting to speak.
All right, all right.
The other one is reactions, where you can raise the thumb like that one on mine.
Uh-huh. All right, so I take it as unanimous. Lisa, are you still with us?
no, she seems to have gone. There's an
I think you're still there. That's a background.
Oh,
All right. All right. So, well, I guess, well, okay. So we'll take it as read that we're going to go regional. Yeah.
Yes, I think you invite people.
Right. So let's just get rid of that. Screen. Right. So all right. So is there any other business?
no.
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 No. So Janet, would you like to give your talk now?
Right, yeah, yes, it's literally a talk because I hadn't really prepared it with share screen in mind. We could try. I've got a lovely picture of a mink. Or will I just press on? Anyway, I was going to say, I've called this Mink in Human Medicine, and I'm going to say, do you remember BSE, mad cow disease?
Yes.
These pictures of cows staggering about. Well, that was the first prion disease to attract public attention. But there are other prion diseases that were known about in animals. Scrapie in sheep is the best known, and it's the most studied. Affected sheep seem to be intensely itchy and scratch and rub, hence the name. But it's interesting because different strains in different countries have different effects. And in France, it was known as La Tremblante because it was nervous signs that were most obvious. Anyway, but affected sheep, they lose weight, they stop eating, they die. It's invariably fatal. And it was a serious economic loss in certain countries. And Britain seems to have been particularly badly affected. But it's quite an ancient disease. There's a similar disease in captive mink. It was called transmissible encephalopathy of mink. It was first seen in Wisconsin in America in 1947. So it's a bit more recent. And they showed similar behavior. They wasted away, they stopped eating and died. And it was believed to be caused from their feeding. They were fed on abattoir waste material, uncooked abattoir waste material, including a material from sheep, which probably had scrapie. And this is generally seen to be the source of BSE in cattle. So that's one disease that mink get. Now, I was going to mention about viruses. I got a little bit distracted when I was doing viruses because it led me in other directions. Viruses, the idea of something so small, smaller than bacteria, which are visible under the microscope, is about the beginning of the 20th century. They were first discovered by Dmitry Ivanovsky in 1892. He found tobacco mosaic disease virus. That's a disease of plants. Then in 1900 or 1901, Walter Reed in America and Mexico found yellow fever virus, which was the first human virus to be found. Now, I haven't pursued this further. I would have thought that would have been considered very important, and it would have. This news would have been disseminated to the medical authorities around the world, but there seems to have been it seems to have disappeared, because when we had the Spanish flu in 1918, 1920, this was generally considered to be a bacterial condition. And lots of doctors spent a lot of time culturing lungs from infected people. And of course, they did find bacteria, because there were secondary bacterial pneumonia in Spanish flu. And they even tried to make vaccines from it, but that wasn't terribly successful either. It wasn't until about 1931 that the idea of viruses came back again. And again, this was in America. Richard Shope in Iowa isolated swine flu from pigs with a type of viral pneumonia. And this can spread to, they probably got it from birds, and then it's spread through the food chain into pigs. I was going to mention about virus. Most animal cells contain both RNA and DNA nucleic acid, and viruses are special in that they only have one or other of these. And RNA viruses are liable to mutation, because when they multiply, there can be errors in the nucleic acid chain in RNA. And both flu and coronaviruses are RNA viruses. The first the first human coronavirus was identified as recently as 1965 at the Common Cold Research Institute in Wiltshire. But that was just a mild disease, so nobody paid a lot of attention to that. Oh, I'm just going to finish off about flu virus. Ferrets, which are a relative of mink, they can be naturally infected by flu, meaning that if you have got a cage with infected ferrets in the same room as a cage with uninfected ferrets, the virus will spread. You don't need to do anything exotic to infect the uninfected animals. And fortuitously for human biology, the pathology in ferret lung apparently is very similar to humans, and they've been widely used to study human respiratory pathogens. And the WHO used blood samples from ferrets to see which is the prevalent strains of flu at any given season. So going back to coronavirus, they were considered not important, and that was until 2003 when we got SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, which appeared in China with a case fatality rate of something like 10%, which is most alarming. And the source was animals, probably bats originally, and then through some other intermediate host, for example, a civet. And we're back into this business of wet markets in China, where all different species of wild animals are kept together in thoroughly unsanitary conditions. SARS was completely eradicated in 2004. A few imported cases did come to Britain at the time, but they didn't spread, and unfortunately, the authorities didn't pay a lot of attention to it. Then in 2012, we got MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome.
Got what?
It's Middle Eastern or Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, known as MERS.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the case fatality rate here is something like 35%. So we're getting into the bubonic scale sort of mortality. And it's another coronavirus which probably originated in bats and spread through dromedary camels. And a few cases are still occurring. It hasn't been eradicated. And it's obviously, but it's obviously a much more severe disease. It's something really to keep an eye on. It's when a new virus jumps hosts like this, it provokes a very severe immune reaction and hence severe disease. Then with evolution, then the disease gets milder and milder. But of course, we can't wait for that in relation to coronavirus now. We want a vaccine immediately. And then this is how it hit the papers fairly recently, returning to mink. This could have been predicted from what we know about ferrets and flu and so on, that outbreaks of COVID-19 occurred in farm mink, first of all in the Netherlands. They were probably infected from their keepers, and then it spread to other cages of mink, and feral cats also spread it. And then they went back to other humans, so that you got mink, human mink transmission. And it seems that in Denmark, there was a strain that, because it mutated by changing hosts, this increased the rate of mutation. And there was one which affected what's known as the spike protein on the outside of the coronavirus. And this is where all the vaccines are aimed at stimulating an immune response to this spike protein. So if that changed significantly, then the vaccines would be ineffective possibly. So the Danish authorities have taken the decision to cull their entire mink population. And at the moment, this is a subject of severe argument and litigation in Denmark, because under their present law, what the Prime Minister said was illegal. Their Prime Minister said, you've got to kill the lot of them. But their laws at present only allowed them to kill mink in colonies or farms where the virus was identified and their immediate contacts. Their current legislation did not actually allow them to say you must kill all mink, whether they appear healthy or not. But it would seem in the interest of public health that it would seem to be the best thing to do. Before we even embark on the arguments about why do we farm animals for fur anyway? Because most other countries seem to be ruling that out on welfare grounds and all the rest of it.
I think I saw something in the papers about it had spread to something like 7 countries already from Denmark.
This mutated strain.
Right.
Yes. Well, that's what we know, that this coronavirus, it can spread so fast. Did anybody watch the program last night on BBC Two? Yeah, about it. Yeah, because way back in February, March, when we had few, or at least we thought we had few cases, just a handful of people who were actually ill with it. But we now know, unfortunately, that there were literally thousands of cases in the country. So we didn't have just one single person coming in with it. We had thousands of people, most of them coming from Italy and Spain. So we really got a very heavy infection early on before anybody sort of knew what was going on.
Janet, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I really will have to go. I'm sorry I can't stay any longer to listen to your talk.
Right.
I'm pleased to see everybody. Thank you very much, and I hope I'll be able to join you again some other time.
Sure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah. We'll forward the recording.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Right, are you taking any more questions or
Oh, yes, yes, I'll try.
It does seem strange in Denmark because they've been extremely stringent about protecting people and restrictions against coronavirus. So it seems a pity that it has mutated to the mink there. And of course, it's caused huge amount of problems. Apparently, they've given some sort of support to the mink farmers. So they've paid for every mink that's been killed. I think they pay something like €3, but it's only about, it's less than half of what they would have got normally if they sold the mink. But at least they're getting some sort of compensation. So. But and I was a bit surprised. I didn't even. I mean, my family. The trouble is, I've got one daughter lives in Malmö, so I would normally travel through Copenhagen to go and visit her, and I was planning to do that at Christmas. And unfortunately, we booked through EasyJet, and we're going to fly from Manchester to Copenhagen and just literally drive across. And then suddenly, the Copenhagen airport's been closed, and the flight's been cancelled, so we can't travel. Then we looked at travelling from where we were then going to fly from KLM from Newcastle to Schiphol up to Stockholm, and then take the train back down from Stockholm to Malmö. But I think most of our family were a bit concerned at my wife and I doing that at our age, when the cases even in Stockholm are rising quite steeply. So.
There is the question of being allowed back into the country afterwards as well.
Well, we did anticipate that. When we come back, we'd have to self-isolate, and it's quite a strict isolation. Can't even go to the shops or anything. So yeah, that could be quite serious. So anyway, what we've had to do, we've cancelled for the moment, and we're just praying that these vaccines come out. And luckily, my wife went to the doctor the other day to get to have a flu injection. And when the nurse was giving the injection and she was walking out, she said, "Oh, I'll be seeing you again shortly." She said, "What for?" She said, "Oh, we've been told to be on alert, and we may have to work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, yes, because we're expecting to get the coronavirus vaccinations, and we'll be calling you back sometime in December. So we're hoping that comes out." So, and she was quite positive about it. So there must be some directive being given out by the government to say, stand by, get ready.
But I think the coronavirus is 2 injections anyway, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's 2, yes. So, I mean, that's the other thing. We're not very clear about it, but presumably we have to get the 1 injection probably, well, hopefully in December, and then we'll probably have to wait till January or a month later and get another one, and then see how we are before we could even think of traveling. So,
Janet, are mink particularly prone to these lung diseases, or or do you want to make some comment on that? That it seems to have got into the mink, and then it's like they're riddled with the disease.
Well, it illustrates how rapidly it can spread. Mm-hmm. Have you seen any pictures of what mink farms are like? Because they look a bit like sort of broiler sheds, or intensively chickens for eggs. With lots of animals together in a very small airspace.
Well, it's just there hasn't been anything that I've seen, say, for example, getting into, say, chicken farms. Because I imagine it would be pretty much the same thing if they got into the chickens or got into the cattle. Yeah.
I mean, is there something specific about mink? Because I mean, if it jumps into other animals, I mean, about pets, it could be cats in your home or
it does transmit into cats, but there's no evidence that it comes back into humans from cats.
No. Oh, I see. I'm pleased about that, because that could be a complete disaster, isn't it?
For the cats.
There were cases in dogs. I think this was in Korea, where people, human people who were ill and had to be hospitalized with coronavirus, their pets were taken into kennels of some sort, and some of their dogs were found to be virus positive, but they were never seen to be ill.
All right.
It may just have been virus DNA on the fur of the dog.
Yes.
Well, I mean, slightly broadening the subject, if we look at AIDS, which is believed to come from monkeys, I think the monkeys in general are immune to it, but it's, you know, it's got into the humans from the monkeys.
Yeah.
So it may be that there's some species which are, you know, immune to the disease completely. Yeah. And then, of course, we're not. Okay.
And just about vaccines, there are a number of diseases in animals, particularly in cats. There's, I think, feline infectious peritonitis, which is a coronavirus disease in cats, and there's never been a successful vaccine made. But of course, when you look at the effort that's gone into this vaccine for human coronavirus, I mean, they've literally thrown everything at it.
Yeah.
The pizza vaccine is a completely new type of vaccine using messenger RNA.
Yes. This is completely new. So obviously we can't know long-term side effects. There may be no immediate side effects, but not anything long-term.
Yeah.
It could be a massive experiment on the entire population soon.
Well, they're probably going to immunize the older population like us first. And so then they'll find that a lot of people die after having the operation simply because they're older. So they'll find a lot of side effects.
Yes, they will.
The cynic in me says that when people are, the death certificates associate them with coronavirus, I just wonder how prevalent the coronavirus was in their circumstances. Because if you've got an underlying heart or whatever condition, you may have passed away anyway, coronavirus or not.
But
the virus on you may not have actually caused you to die, yet does that come onto the death certificate?
Well, that's a really tricky one, Mike, you see, because I think the virus doesn't actually kill you. You know, what's happening is that, you know, because of the virus, people are failing, you know, either the kidneys are failing, the heart's failing.
All right, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, you say, well, what was it? You know, and I mean, I don't think they're going to do a complete autopsy on 50,000 people.
No. This is why I think if you look at the statistics or you followed them, they've actually changed. And it's because different countries for a start have measured it in different ways. And I think if you look at there was one time, I think it was way back about June, we had very, very high figures in the UK over about 55,000 deaths. And then suddenly they corrected it and it went down to about 40,000. And then it started creeping back up. I mean, I know it's back up to about 55,000 now, but it's this question. And now, if you look at it, they say somebody has tested positive within the previous 28 days. It's as Robert says, you don't probably die of the virus itself, you die of some other cause, but the cause may have been because you did have the virus. And that's.
I think what they're looking at, though, is say excess deaths are seasonally adjusted or whatever. You know, you can say, well, there's something definitely going on. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I can add something to that, actually, because my father died earlier this year when coronavirus was just starting to hit. And the coroner called my sister and said, was he unwell? Was he deteriorating? And I mean, he'd been in a care home for a couple of years, so he wasn't doing great. But it had only taken about 2 weeks from him being someone who could kind of move around on his own and go and sit down and have a meal, to him being dead. It was very, very rapid decline. So the coroner asked my sister, did he have coronavirus symptoms? And my sister said, no, he didn't. He seemed to have a bladder infection or something. And the hospital wouldn't allow him to go into the hospital because they said it's more dangerous in the hospital right now than it is to stay in the care home. So he came back to the care home where he later died. The coroner said, well, then you have two options. We can do a post-mortem and establish cause of death, or we can say it's coronavirus and then you don't need a post-mortem. What do you prefer? So we said we prefer no post-mortem. So he went down as having died of COVID-19, when in fact it is much more likely he died from some kind of septic something or other as a result of the bladder infection he'd had. So he is a number, a statistic, but he's a false number. He didn't die of it.
Well, to muddy the waters even further, I think there's the disease can affect different parts of the body, because I've got one friend, she had like a very acute conjunctivitis that, you know, she actually got it in the eyes. And then I think some people get it in the digestive tract rather than in the lungs. So then it takes a completely different form there.
Yeah, when I had it, I lost, I didn't lose my sense of taste, but everything tasted really freaky. And whereas a cold or a flu will make me very tired and sleepy, this didn't. It made me really rattly and hot. It was boiling hot and really unsettled. I was only sleeping 2 hours or half an hour, then dozing again. It was terrible. Everything tasted yucky, and I had really horrible digestive cramps. And it made me very foggy in the brain. Found it really difficult to make simple decisions like what to eat, what to wear, whether to sit here or sit there, or what to watch on TV. Found it really difficult to make a decision. It gave me something that I researched is now called COVID fog. And that continued for about 5 days after I was back at work. Found it really difficult to go into work for those few days. I just couldn't decide what to wear, what to have for breakfast, what to take for lunch. These snap decisions one normally makes, I was completely overwhelmed by them. And then it cleared and now I'm fine. But I didn't have a cough and I didn't have any flu-like symptoms, just this burning up, but not burning up that makes you feel really weak and tired like a flu, burning up as if the room was really hot. Yeah, so it was very strange, but I know it was something that I've never had before. I know that it was really unusual. I've never had anything like that before. So for all the world, it felt a bit hormone-like. I remember feeling a bit like that when I was pregnant.
Really?
Yeah, felt a bit like that.
Wow.
Yes.
Right. Gordon, you've got your hand up.
Oh, how did I do that? No, not supposed to be. Is that the yellow hand?
I don't have that hand because I'm running the group. All right.
So
but that's
has the hand gone down now? Has it gone down?
I'll just check. No, it's still up.
It's not his hand, it's something else on the side of the screen.
Yes.
Oh,
A bit of light shining on.
No. I've lowered the hand, so we're in business. All right. Anybody want to take the discussion any further?
Already out of my comfort zone.
Yeah. All right. So thank you very much, Janet. Yeah. Gordon, do you want to make a contribution?
Yeah, I prepared a few notes. I hope it won't bore anybody too much, but there's a number of things seem to all happen in the last couple of weeks, and that was I read the newspapers about Boris Johnson announcing a 10-point plan for the green economy of the future. So as it tied up, I was also been looking, because I'm a member of the Chartered Institute of Building Services Engineers, had already been looking at various forms of energy and how we could get more efficient buildings. So the two things did seem to tie in. I mean, I don't know whether anybody's aware. I mean, it's all been in the newspaper, so I'm probably telling you something you're very well aware of. I mean, for instance, he said electric vehicles, well, petrol and diesel cars have got to be banned before 2030. I mean, that's banned the sale of them. Presumably you can still use them for a while thereafter, but the sale of petrol and diesel cars has got to stop by 2030. He's presuming that buses, cycling and walking that is going to be encouraged with zero emissions from public transport. He's talking about jet zero. So he's looking at, we're going to have to spend money on research to see if we can get planes to fly on more cleaner fuel than what they're currently using, because that's a huge amount of pollution into the air. Homes and public buildings, I mean, there's been an ongoing grant scheme to try and encourage people to put energy efficiency into homes. And there's a big drive towards heat pumps. The Britons seem to be very, very slow at adopting heat pumps in comparison to the Scandinavian countries, where it's just is the norm. So an electric heat pump running, well, especially if it's on clean electricity, would be a very clean way of heating a building or a house. And certainly I know my daughter's house in Sweden, they never even thought about it. I mean, their house has an electric heat pump and that's it. So there's been quite a lot of development in heat pumps, and particularly for commercial buildings. So there's a new heat pump that uses CO, actually, as it happens, carbon dioxide instead of a refrigerant, and it can heat water up to 90 degrees C. So it would be appropriate for heating. So there's a lot of work on that.
So sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
The source of heat is what?
Well, with a heat pump, it can be a number of sources. It can be just the standard one can just be an air source heat pump, and it can be getting the heat literally from the air. Now it seems strange. I mean, I was in Sweden a few years ago at Christmas when it was about -10 outside, and they were using a heat pump. And the heat pump has a ratio of something like 3.5. It'll produce 3.5 kilowatts of heat from 1 kilowatt of electricity. So it was taking the so-called heat from the outside and heating it up enough to run the central heating and the hot water systems for the house. But there are other plans. There's water-to-water ones. So I mean, even in this area of the northeast, there's been developments where they're using water from old mine workings, pumping it up, circulating it, and then pumping it back down, and then using a water-to-water heat pump. By doing that, you're probably taking about 5 degrees out of the water, so you've already got a start towards heating your building, because the water coming from underground is probably something like 8 or 10 degrees, whereas the outside air temperature might be even below freezing at that point. So you're gaining some heat. So there's various heat pumps. So that's another system. Another thing which is probably, I don't know how much people know about, is this business of hydrogen and putting hydrogen into the gas system. So at the moment, the majority of the British island, UK, nearly all the buildings are connected somewhere or other to a gas network. So we've got a huge gas network all around the country. And we've gone from what used to be coal gas to using natural gas, mostly taken from the North Sea. So we already have that infrastructure in place. Now, from the 1990s, boilers, central heating boilers, have been designed so they can take 23% hydrogen. Now, at the moment, they're not running on hydrogen, they're running on natural gas, which is mainly methane. But in some areas that we've been testing, injecting up to 20% into the gas. Hydrogen, when it burns, has a different flame speed. It's almost an invisible gas when you see a flame. So its characteristics are different to methane. So what they've been doing is testing it, injecting 20% hydrogen into the natural gas, and a 20% injection would reduce the CO2 content of the emissions by about 7 or 8%. Now they've done this. They started off at a place called Keele University, and they had about 100 residencies, and so they've gone around and they've put hydrogen in, or are still in the process of putting hydrogen in and testing it. And it seems the boilers can work and the cookers can work with really no change or no adaptation. There's a plan to extend it up to Winlayton, as it happens, here in the northeast. Now I'm not sure. I'll have to look into it, but I don't think it's started yet. But we're going to inject about 20% hydrogen into the gas network for the Winlayton area. So that would be quite interesting. But there's another project down in the Teesside area, which is acceptable because you've got the natural gas, or LNG, coming in on Teesside. We've got huge chemical and steel works there. So we can build distillation columns, and from the natural gas, we can convert it into hydrogen and CO2. But then the plan is then to inject the CO2 back into salt caverns, or put it back into the oil wells back in the sea. So we'll capture the CO2 and take the hydrogen and put it into the gas network. But there's a project to eventually replace all the natural gas with 100% hydrogen. And there's a plan to do that in the Leeds area. So in Leeds, we're going to try and take area by area by area and go to 100% hydrogen, which means you're going to have to change all the boilers and the burners on the cookers and so on to adapt to different characteristics of the gas. So that work is already in hand. In Boris Johnson's plan, he'd forgotten about solar, but solar is taking off quite a lot in this country. There's a number of quite big projects being done. Aviva, the insurance company, have done 2 very big ones. They did a car park for their premises in Norwich, and they did generating something like 688 kilowatts of power. And they were generating during the day, obviously not at night, and storing it so they can still run the building at night as well. So they're only using about 91% of their generated power to keep their building going. So the balance of the power goes for storage, or even selling it into the grid. And then they've done another project in Perth in Scotland where they've done the same thing. So there's a lot of work being done on solar systems as well. And then of course the big development is in wind turbines. I mean, at the moment, the UK generates something like 20% of our electricity using wind, either onshore or offshore. Now, with the various developments, we're going to need to increase the capacity of our electrical grid by something like 60–70% before 2050. So the electrical grid will be replacing the other systems, because if we go to electric cars, they've got to be charged somehow. If we go to heat pumps, they've got to be fed by electricity. So if we can generate more wind power, and so there's a plan to, at the moment we're generating, I say 20%, they want to double the capacity. So we've got about 10,000 wind turbines, so we're going to have to go up to about 20,000 wind turbines to be able to compete, do that. So as a country, we're, I think, in terms of emissions, we've already cut emissions a lot. I mean, a lot of it's been because the industry's closed down and we've changed to more IT type industries. But as I say, we've got conferences coming up in the Glasgow conference for the COP in November next year. So we want to be seen to be doing the right thing from a clean energy point of view. And as it happens, we're also taking the presidency of the G7 next year. in 2021. So again, we want to be able to demonstrate to America and China that we can do something about energy efficiency and clean energy. So, Mike, is some question?
Yeah, the one thing, Gordon, I was wondering, the one that you haven't mentioned would be the tidal situation. I understand many, many years ago, we were trying to do electricity like hydro by the Severn Bore, for example. That when the tide comes in, you generate electricity. When the tide goes out, the water level is dropping, you can generate it. Is there anything on that score going on?
There is. It's because it's relatively expensive. People have not done so much about it. Now there's a tidal barrage system. So as you say, the tide comes in, the turbines run one direction, and then when the tide goes out, it runs again. But you'd have to build complete barrages, and of course there's quite a lot of reluctance. One from a cost point of view, and two from an environmental point of view of blocking waterways. But there are, right in the north of Scotland, there's an area right at the north tip where there's quite fast currents underneath the water. And what they've done is they've put turbines in the water, and they've collected electricity in those locations, and it's been generating that. And these have been relatively successful, but it's still very, in total terms, relatively small. But I think because we're an island nation, I think there must be a lot more potential. So I think you're quite right in that respect, Mike. And I will follow up, but I've not heard very much. I mean, it's quite a few years ago I'd heard that they were doing tidal and turbines in the sea. And I'm going back 2 or 3 years ago, and I've not heard anything recently. But I think it's an area of research that should be developed. Yeah.
Well, I go to the Newburn, the riverside at Newburn quite a lot, and there's a slipway there to launch boats, and I mean the tide rises 2 or 3 feet at Newburn, and that's way up the river. So it must be. There's an awful lot of power in water.
There is. But the trouble is, we go and blocked the Tyne as an example.
Oh, that right, yes. I
other problems.
Yeah. I follow that.
Yeah. Funny enough, I was down in York earlier in the year, and I was talking to one of my friends. He used to live in Mombasa. He was one of my neighbours in Mombasa. He now lives in York, and he lives on the side of the river. So he's a civil engineer, and he's quite concerned, and he follows what happens about flood defences and so on, both from a knowledgeable point of view and basically because he lives there, so he's concerned, So he's been following that. And when we went to visit him, I was quite surprised that you've got the River Ouse, but there's another river, I can't remember the name now, joins the Ouse. I think it's the Foss, just in York. And when the floods come off the Pennines, it's coming down 2 rivers at the same time and backs back into York. And then the river then flows down and it winds its way a huge distance through the countryside before it enters the sea at the Humber. So there's a huge amount of water, and of course there's about another 5 rivers joining it before it exits it. So as you say, there's a lot of power in that river, but I don't think anybody wants to blocking it.
Gordon, a couple of points. I think wind power is the cheapest source of electricity at the moment. Yeah.
Well, it's debatable. I mean, people are also saying solar. And if you look at the continent, to be honest, countries like Germany years ago put in a rebate system whereby people were sort of almost paid. Well, what happens is they get help to put the solar panels on the roofs of the buildings. They sell the power to the electricity grid at a higher rate during the daytime, and then they buy it back at night. And if you drive through Germany and Holland, nearly every single house roof in these countries has got solar on. So, and one of the, I think, mistakes we made in this country is we withdrew the grant system from solar on house roofs. But you know, I mean, if you look at, we've got, I think, something like 23 million houses in the country, and we've got the potential to have them covered with solar panels, and the cost of solar panels is dropping all the time. So we could be generating a huge amount of electricity, not by. I'm a bit of not too keen on people covering green fields with solar panels. I'd rather, because that's going to spoil the countryside. I'd rather see them on the top of rooftops and warehouse roofs. I think there's much more potential there.
The other point is, you talked about putting hydrogen into the system. Where's the hydrogen coming from?
Well, there's several methods of producing hydrogen. One is electrolysis, but it's very small scale, and of course it still uses a huge amount of electricity.
Right.
But the scheme that's been proposed for Teesside is to do this sequencing system where you bring the natural gas in, and then you pass it through a huge, like, distillation type columns, and from that they can extract the hydrogen part and split it away from the carbon and the nitrogen and the other gases, and then they have to store the carbon and just use the hydrogen.
Okay.
Either system needs electricity, though.
Sure. Yeah. It's a, yeah. Okay. Fine.
But that's why it ties up with Teesside, though, because in the Tyne and Tees, we had old shipyards and steelworks, so we can build wind turbines. So in some respects, what Boris Johnson has announced does really help the northeast or the north of the country, because we can build the turbines, we can service them from the Tyne and the Tees, we can bring the electrical power off the Yorkshire coast. We can bring and we bring the gas in already from the Yorkshire coast, and Teesside is already we've got all the land and the infrastructure and the people even to help build these plants to produce the hydrogen. So we in the northeast could benefit a lot by the system.
Right. Good. Enjoyed that. Thanks very much.
Okay.
And any more questions for Gordon?
Can it be done within 10 years?
I must check, Janet, as to what we can do. I mean, the plan is that we've got to be net zero by 2050. And there's a huge, in 10 years, they want, I can't remember the figures, but we want a huge reduction. Now, in truth, we've done quite well in terms of reducing CO2 because, well, because industry has dropped dramatically. In the northeast, we've done particularly well because we've got huge sinks for the carbon, because we've got the Kielder forest, for instance. And if we can continue to plant more trees and develop the forests, we'll do even better. But as an area of the northeast, we've done relatively well. And I can't remember that we've made a commitment to cut CO2 by a certain amount by 2030, but I can't remember the figure at the moment. So, but I can check and email you with it.
Good.
One of the things I've read recently was about aircraft being hydrogen powered. And I don't mean by Zeppelins and things like that, but
no.
I mean, how logical or feasible is that likely to be, do you think?
Well, it's obviously very, very early days. I mean, there's got a huge amount of development. But if you look at it, I mean, if all the areas of, if you like, emissions that are coming out around the world, if you look at flights and you look at what's happened during this coronavirus, and when all the flights have stopped, it's actually cut emissions by enormous amount.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, if you start studying how many flights go around the world, I mean, every single airport in the world is accepting thousands and thousands of flights per day, and this is all cut down to just a few percent at the moment. As soon as we solve the coronavirus, they'll all start taking off again. Yeah.
Sure. Well, coming back to the hydrogen, you've got the problem that you would have to liquefy it, I think, to use it on a plane, or pressurize it, with both of which are quite dangerous. Yeah.
Well, that's right, and of course you've then got the weight of the pressure vessel. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think they're starting to come up with electrical planes, so possibly that's what they would do. Yeah.
Well, that's another possibility. I mean, from what I understand, they have actually developed a small, probably just takes 1 or 2 passengers, electric plane. I think it's just with a propeller, so there's a long, long way to go between a small electric plane and a massive passenger jet taking 300 passengers.
Sure.
There's a lot of development to be done.
Yeah, but the first planes were like 1 passenger or 2 passengers, themselves.
Yeah.
So you've got to start somewhere.
Yeah. I think the other problem we've got in this, sorry to interrupt, the country we've got in this, we've got 8 nuclear power stations at the moment. And the nuclear power station, I just tell you to check, is developing 17.5% of our energy is coming from, of our electrical energy is coming from nuclear. Now, out of these 8 power stations, all of them are going to close between now and 2030. And we've got 1 still in construction, which is supposed to come online. So by 2030, if we don't extend the life of the present nuclear power stations, we'll not have any. So we've got to fill that gap. So we've either got to build some new ones or go ahead with some more to replace them. So that nuclear power is an area that we need to be developing further as well.
Well, possibly. Some people would argue that nuclear is the most expensive type of energy, but also if you get in the costs of nuclear generated energy, they never give you the decommissioning price costs involved, or the development costs. It's only the online costs, if you see what I mean. That I think nuclear energy is a very expensive form of energy, and the uranium supplies are limited anyway. Yeah,
but it has potential. I mean, if you think, I think we're looking at small nuclear plants as a backup to all the wind, because wind power and solar and so on is obviously variable depending on natural conditions. So we've got to have something stable as a backup to it. So now, if we built nuclear plants which can drive aircraft carriers or submarines, I think we could probably site a few small ones around the country to back up our grid system.
Yep.
So it's another area of development. I'm trying to keep the engineers in a job.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
When you talk about aircraft, I mean, British Airways have retired all their 747 fleet. Because they're not fuel efficient compared to the more modern jets. I suppose they're talking about the Dreamliner and things like that, the A380. I mean, I went on that a couple of years ago to New Zealand. I mean, it potentially can take 800 passengers if you don't have any first class or economy, if it's all economy. And when you think 1 aircraft taking 800 as opposed to 2 aircraft or 3 having to take the 800, there's got to be some saving in that, one would assume, and carbon emissions I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well,
all right.
Okay.
Thanks very much for that. Appreciated it.
Good.
Yeah. Susan?
Yeah. Just putting the light on, it's going dark.
Right.
I'll do the same.
Yeah. Did you want to make your presentation now?
It's yes, I will. It's well, I've called it testing the tests. So it's not so very scientific in some sort of way, but I found it very interesting. I don't know whether anybody knows about Voice or its panel of volunteers. Do you know about Voice?
No.
No.
It's an organisation called in the Northeast Research and Engagement Panel. It's coordinated by Newcastle University and the Institute of Aging. And it's a public and patient initiative to help give opportunities to be involved, engage and participate in research. And it's part of a UK-wide thing. Well, I'm a member of that and I volunteer to be in research and as a patient, you know, all sorts of things. So they also promote talks from other organisations around the country, such as Imperial College. And last month there was a Zoom session on the work of the MIC teams presented by that team based in Newcastle. MIC stands for MedTech and In Vitro Diagnostic Cooperatives, of which there are 11 across the country, funded by NIHR, which is the National Institute for Health Research, which is a government agency and the nation's largest funder of health and care research. And some of the MICs are focused on medicines and others, such as Newcastle, on new in vitro diagnostic tests. So with apologies to the medical people here who know all about this, diagnostic tests are used to assess the suitability for appropriate treatment. And in vitro diagnostic testing is a method that uses samples from the body to diagnose a disease, such as urine, saliva, and blood. MIC teams work with organizations and companies who are generating new tests so that they can be used in the NHS. They're sort of bridge between healthcare and industry. They also help with clinical studies, various analyses, passing on views from experts, etc. And they facilitate care pathway analyses, mapping out patients' experiences through interviews and surveys. The MIC team in Newcastle consists of 12 members plus other experts, and they've recently included a panel of patients to get their views too. Not surprisingly, at the moment, the Newcastle team is focusing on COVID testing, helping medical staff with decision-making, reviewing world literature, and members of the team sit on advisory panels, help set up clinical studies. And they're also part of CONDOR, which is another acronym standing for COVID-19 National Diagnostic Research and Evaluation Programme, which is a national organisation coordinating the approach through all UK hospitals. 2 members of the public panel also help with promoting uniform care pathway and laboratory analyses and how tests perform in hospital settings. A member of the team, an in vitro diagnostic evaluation methodology, sorry, it's a mouthful, spoke about her work evaluating 4 types of tests. So the screening tests where there are no apparent symptoms, e.g. colon and cervical. Diagnostic, where symptoms are apparent and the test confirms. Prognostic, using to identify or categorize into different levels of risk. And monitoring, which is keeping track of diseases such as diabetes and responses to treatment, etc. Not surprisingly, screening is rarely perfect, and the aim is for a gold standard based on the best possible outcome. There are 4 possible outcomes from tests known as, they work it out on a 2x2 table. From those with a disease, true positives and false negatives, termed sensitivity, where high true positive expressed as a percentage is wanted. And from healthy subjects, false positives and true negatives, termed specificity, where a high true negative is aimed for. For COVID testing, incorrect or false positives can lead to accidental exposure, delayed or cancelled procedures and self-isolation. False negatives might mean no isolation, infection of others, and delays in repeated testing. False positives results might come from contamination of samples, while false negatives may be due to poor sampling, delays in collection, etc. And all these results are dependent on the prevalence of a disease in a community, where a high prevalence gives the possibility of a correct diagnosis, hence the need for mass testing. If the number is high, then it's reasonable to assume that the false negatives have the disease also. Trying to assess test accuracy where there's no gold standard is difficult. And with COVID, as we know, the situation keeps changing. Therefore, the benefits and harms keep changing too. International cooperation is continuous, though as there are over 1,000 tests worldwide, it cannot be complete, especially as there's always such things as availability, suitability, local regulations to take into consideration. So in conclusion, this person said that they all depend on the need to understand where and how a test will be used, the need to understand changes at all levels, and the need to equate all possible benefits and harms of the test. So to me, it was very interesting to see all the sorts of things that are going on behind the scenes to make sure that, well, in the end, that we keep safe. So if anybody was interested in hearing the whole of that talk, it has been recorded on YouTube. So if anybody wanted, I could send it over to Robert, and he could.
I'll include that in the notes which I send out.
Okay,
yeah?
right.
Yeah, thanks very much.
I'll send it over to you. Yes.
Thanks a lot.
But I can thoroughly, well, say recommend. I do find it very helpful to be part of this voice organization, and they send notifications every so often of what various researches are going on and who they want, so you can pick and choose. And I've been, for several years, I've been part of a research into Parkinson's disease, and I've done dietary ones and all sorts of things like that. It does help to keep up to date with what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, I'd say there that U3A is quite well involved with voice generally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a number of things in the monthly newsletters where they're looking for volunteers for various pieces of research. Yeah. Right, I think we better crack on. It's 1:30 already. It's 3:30 already.
1:30.
3:30. Lisa, would you like to come in now?
Okay, I will do. What time are we finishing, Robert?
Well, I guess when people are ready to go.
Okay.
Because I've got some contributions to make or not, as the case may be.
Right. Okay, then I'll do a really little mini one. Just during this time, this pandemic, I've noticed something happening to my brain, which is sometimes I'm filled with optimism and feel like, oh, great, we're coming out of it. And then something happens and I feel devastated because I'm disappointed and we're not. So when the numbers are falling, I feel okay. When the numbers are rising, I feel depressed. And I'm finding those effects affect my whole body and my outlook. So I had a look at the science of hope. And it says, what I learned was that hope is it's actually a healing experience for the brain. So I'll just make sure I know what the names of things are. Hang on. Well, okay, well, it changes the sort of chemistry of your brain. It releases neurochemicals, endorphins and enkephalins. So when you feel hopeful and optimistic about something, then you have endorphins and enkephalins running about the brain, which mimic the effects of morphine, which is a pain relief, obviously, and accelerates healing. So when we feel optimistic that we'll soon be able to travel again and it will soon be Christmas and then this time next year it'll all be forgotten, when we've got that going on, we feel a sense of well-being and like we're healing. And then disappointment suddenly cuts off these endorphins and enkephalins. Bang, like the rug pulled out from under us when we've booked a holiday and we're optimistic, and then suddenly we can't go because we can't do the 14 days quarantine and so on. Or we think that a friend is coming to stay and then he can't come and all that. And I've been on this hideous roller coaster of up and down throughout the whole pandemic. So I was questioning myself whether there's any point in hoping, because when there's hope, its companion, disappointment, stalks behind it and robs you of your joy. Is it better, therefore, not to ever have any hope, because then you won't ever experience the yuckiness of disappointment when it comes? So I just wanted to put that to the group. What do they feel? Dare we hope? Is it better to have no hope and no disappointment as well?
Well, I would have to ask Nigel if you can buy these enkephalins in the bottle.
If you exercise, if you take exercise, that releases endorphins. So that should help.
Isn't this perhaps the differences between optimists and pessimists as well? I'm a bit of a pessimist, and throughout my life, I'm afraid I've always sort of expected the worst, because I know that if it doesn't turn up, I'm very happy. So if you expect the worst, you're never going to be disappointed. So I think a lot of it's to do with the way you think, actually, and certainly people who practice things, mindfulness and things like that, who can, and perhaps the results of CBT and things where you can order your thoughts a bit better may help. But I do appreciate, because I think all of us have been going on these ups and downs, and you're bound to pick up something from the media that helps you feel happy, even though you know in your heart of hearts, or intellectually, you know that what you're reading in the media is probably only half the truth, or somebody's made up and stuff. So it's a very interesting subject.
A couple of things I'd say here. One of them is that we're just one thought away from every possible emotion that we have. Yeah. So, you could win the lottery and then all of a sudden you're going to be really high, or then you get a phone call that your nearest and dearest is dead, and then you go really low. A slight aside is I heard sort of like some really interesting research about snake bites or snake venom. Some people had been looking into snake bites, and animals and humans, when they're bitten by a snake, they behave in a very irrational way. Yeah, that it's almost like they believe they're going to die, so sure enough, that's what they do. So somebody looked into it and then said, well, what's going on here? Why do the humans, or why do the animals start behaving in this way? Yeah. Now, obviously, when the snake bites you, it doesn't want you to run a long distance if it's going to eat you. So maybe the medical people went to talk to some chemists and said, well, what do you think's going on here? Could you have a look at the poison for us? And the chemists say, well, we can't look for everything. There isn't a machine that'll tell you, or there wasn't at the time, what is in the poison. Yeah. But we need to find out if there was a chemical that made us give up the ghost. Yeah. What it would look like. And then if you can tell me what it would look like, then I can look for it. So they came to some conclusions about what sort of chemicals would be necessary to be in the venom to actually make people think, oh, well, I'm going to die, and then just lie down and die. And then sure enough, they did find that. So, the snake venom is really clever in that respect, or the snakes are very clever in that respect. Yeah.
So just to clarify, Robert, are you suggesting in layman's terms that part of the venom's function is to give your brain despair, which will hasten your demise?
Yeah. Yeah, you see, for example, the way that I would talk about it is if you were flying in a plane over the desert and then the plane came down, yeah? So you say, okay, I've got so much water, I've got so much food, I'm going to walk, yeah? But at some point, you're going to say, look, I'm not going to make it anymore. You know, you might make 50 miles, you might make 5 miles. And then you say, that's it, I'm not going to make it. And then you lie down and then you'll die. Yeah. So there is this, you know, giving up the ghost process that we go through, I think. Yeah.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, no, well, more than that, I think there's a chemical process, you know, that your brain says, that's it. I'm just not going to make it. You know, so some people might be able to walk 150 miles on a cup of water. You know, they're really strong-willed or physically very strong. And then, yeah, okay, so broaden it out. You see, I was working in the North Sea on the platforms, and the water in the North Sea is about 4 degrees all year round, yeah? So if you fell off in the platform into the water, you'd probably survive something like 20 minutes, and then you'd die from hypothermia. Yeah. So under those circumstances, you should last at least 20 minutes. Yeah. Now, when the Zugreba ferry went down, yeah, so you had people trapped in their cabins, the water was warmer than 4 degrees. Yeah. And they were dying after 10 minutes. You know, so you say, well, how can that be? You know, you're warm enough to last at least 20 minutes. But you're dying after 10 minutes or even less than that, you know? So there was something going on in those people, you know, in the cabins who are, you know, sure enough, they're going to die. Either they get out or they're going to drown or they're going to die of cold or they're going to suffocate, you know, one or the other. But they were dying a lot quicker than they should have been. Yeah.
Is that a psychological effect?
Yeah, it's a psychological, and then it becomes physical. And then I'm not capable of saying, you know, what's going on. Maybe Nigel would have an idea, but, you know, something's going on that you say, look, that's it, I'm a goner. And then you die. Yeah.
Well, I don't really know much about this, but it's said that if you're having an anaphylactic reaction, you know, you feel that you're going to die.
Uh-huh.
And that's one of the symptoms. There's another thing. I'm sure I read an article about animals kind of freezing because of fear and dying when they were being attacked by a predator.
Really?
Yes.
Oh. Well, sorry, there's a slight aside, but I mean, I remember there was something in say Northern Ireland, all right, where what would happen is that somebody would shoot at a soldier and the bullet actually missed the soldier, right? But the shock of almost being killed them. Yeah. But the authorities would never tell the relatives that he died from almost being hit by a bullet. You know, I mean, you're going to say, well, that would be too cruel, you know, but it's a phenomenon that, you know, just the fact that you almost got killed is enough to kill you. Yeah.
Yeah. So is our conclusion then that rather than saying whether the hope is useful or not, we can definitely say that despair is toxic and will hasten your demise. So being in despair or giving up is a ticking time bomb.
Yes. And not only that, you're going to spread it to other people which is going to kill them.
Really?
No, but seriously,
Yes.
you know, and it's like, well, you know, you can say, well, always look on the bright side or whatever, but you know, I mean, you'd probably find, I think, on average, that optimists live longer than pessimists.
Mm.
No? Yes?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think I've heard that.
No idea.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, to the extent that I would class myself as an optimist, and the optimist says this isn't going to get over in the next week or two, it will be over at some point.
Everything passes.
Yeah, at some point, the coronavirus will be something that happened in the past. But that may be, that could be a year away or even more. We just don't know. But I would say that that's my attitude, to the extent that I can understand that if you then go to the opposite extreme and say that everybody's going to die in the next 6 months because of it, then, you know, that's one hell of a thing to have to go through.
Well, okay. I mean, this is one for Janet and Nigel, you see, but there's a whole lot of science, you see, that I think they're talking about, like maybe 20% of people are naturally immune to it, right? So there's 20% of people that are never going to catch it, no matter whatever happens.
That's
right?
Coronavirus.
The coronavirus.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now, also, to the best of my knowledge.
So excuse me, let me go and check what's happening to my dog.
It's got a snake.
So, to the best of my knowledge, nothing is 100% fatal to humans in terms of diseases. Obviously, a bullet through the head is going to be fatal. But even if you take the worst case, which is rabies, I think there's like one boy in India and one girl in the United States that have actually had it. They've had no treatment whatsoever, and they've actually come through it, right? So there's possibly, you know, there's no disease that's going to kill everybody, full stop. You know, that there is always a survival rate. Yeah?
Yes.
You know, so it is not the end of the world.
No.
Yeah. I think it's running at about 3% at the moment. You know, 3% of people who catch it die. Yeah, and it's kind of tailing off because
I thought it was less than that. I thought it
Less
was
than
nearer.
that.
Yeah.
No, like 0.3%.
no, I'm
Yes.
talking about the people that actually get the disease. You know, I'm following the world of data. They would say that worldwide, I think you've had about 30 million people. I mean, I can pull it up. I'll pull it up. Yeah.
Well, like you could compare it with the fact that more people died in the Spanish flu than were killed in the war. It's First World War.
Nope, I'm having some problems here. Right, I've got some difficulty, but I'll, you know, I mean, I follow that every day, and it's basically saying that it's about 3%. It was up to something like 20% at the very beginning, because I think that what you might describe as
That's if you're positive for the virus, then your risk of dying is 3%.
Yes, yeah, you could kind of look at. I think you could say, like, of all the people this year, right? You know, the one that have actually had a conclusion, i.e. they've recovered or they've died, right? 3% of the positive cases have actually died.
Is that people in hospital then?
No, that's just all of the people. You see, you're comparing the people that have tested positive, all right? So they've either stayed at home and recovered, or they've gone into hospital, right?
But they've shown signs, that's why they were tested.
Right. So 3% of them have actually died, which is, you know, I mean, it's obviously a lot more serious than the flu,
Oh, it isn't necessarily.
What do you
So
mean?
another way of putting it is 97% recovered, isn't it? So it's a lot. So you should be optimistic.
Yeah, but you know, as I say, in the early days, it was a lot higher, but then it was, you know, it had got into the care homes and so on. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
And they probably haven't tested as many. I think we've now tested a lot more people as well, isn't it? So probably a lot of people possibly had it and it wasn't tested. It was only the ones that were really sick initially.
Oh, sure. I mean, all you can do is sort of say, you know, of the ones that have been tested or the ones that have been confirmed, 3% of them actually die. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know. Yeah. You know. So I'm sorry. It's just there's a technical issue that I can't actually get onto it. You know, to actually pull it up. I think one of you people could do it. It would say like it's world of coronavirus or something like that. If you Google it, you know.
Yeah, no, I've checked it quite often. It's called it's coronavirus worldometer.
That's the one, worldometer. Yeah.
Yeah, and when it's, I mean, okay, I don't want to keep looking at it because it's a bit depressing, but at the same time, it's phenomenal that every single day they're updating it. There's about 200 countries listed there. Gives you the number of cases per day, gives you the population, number of cases per population, a lot of information in a huge table. So it's
is that an American site?
Yeah, that it's Harvard Medical School.
Harvard,
I think.
Yes. Yeah.
But you know, that's the one that I check every day. And as I say, that, you know, it's 3%. But if you're one of that 3%, then it's a big number. It's a bad number. Yeah. You know. But yeah, you know, I think it's almost self-evident that if you're an optimist and you're looking on the bright side, then your immune system will be stronger than if you were depressed and on the negative side. So you're more than likely to come through this. Yeah.
Okay, so let's all be optimistic.
All right. So right, what have we got? It's 10 to 4. I've got a number of things that I was going to present, but time's pressing. There's a number of, can you say, like pages on YouTube, which are about, you know, how we do things. How's this done? Yeah. So I found a number of ones which I found interesting. How do we make chocolate biscuits? All right. So how we make chocolate biscuits. And then the other thing that I was interested in was keys. Yeah. You know, how keys work. All right. And then, so I've got a presentation on how to construct a padlock and how padlocks work. And then one on how keys work. So is anybody interested in any of those?
Yes, that sort of thing. Yes, I would be. I mean, you're talking about chocolate biscuits and what have you. Just want to watch Greg Wallace's program on television. I think they call it Made in the Factory or some name like that.
Yes.
All right. I know those series.
Program. Well, his is an hour long, doing one product, as opposed to there are two others that I watch, which be 2 or 3 products in half an hour. Which
no, it's nowhere near as bad as you're saying. It's like 5 minutes on how you see that. I mean, the question is, you say, well, I can make a chocolate biscuit, which is fair enough, but how do you make, you know, 20,000 chocolate biscuits an hour? That's the real question here. All right, so we're going to do chocolate biscuits now.
I don't think I could eat that many.
no, I take it back. We're not talking about chocolate biscuits here. We're talking about chocolate caramel biscuits. Yeah.
Oh,
so we've gone way beyond the chocolate biscuit technology. It's like a biscuit. It's a layer of caramel and then a layer of chocolate. All right.
Right, okay, well,
Yeah.
Mr. Kipling's factory the other day, that was brilliant.
Yeah. No, this is a McVitie's thing.
Yes, I've seen that one.
Yeah. So let's have a look. Can you all see this?
Yes, I see it, yeah.
Locks.
It's about locks, yeah.
What? Sorry.
It's not chocolate biscuits, no.
I know.
Locking the chocolate biscuits up.
I know. I must have hit the wrong button. I do apologize for that. Oh, jeez.
In Tumblr.
Oh. Sorry, we've got a technical problem here.
That's all right. Well, let's see how the pin tumbler works then.
All right, I'll tell you what, we'll do that.
Well, what we can do is when we next have a proper meeting and we actually meet, you can bring the chocolate biscuits to the meeting, Robert. We can test them.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating.
Oops.
Still can't see how a master key works for all of them.
Well, it brings us back to vaccines, the idea that you've got receptors, antigens and antibodies, and that we use the analogy of a lock and key to explain how that works. I don't know what the actual molecular truth is, but that's the analogy that's used to help you understand how it works.
All right.
I don't know. Well, it's an analogy, but I think it is in words, not so much in practice.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to.
Sorry, we've got a
Yeah,
technical problem. You can talk among yourselves.
I think I'm going now.
Yeah.
Have to go now.
Thanks, Robert. See you next week, folks, or next month.
All right, then.
Yeah. Bye for now. Bye.